Hello, YouTube. It's here. We are here. The second installment of my tournament has just, at least day one is coming to a conclusion, and we have quite a few players that are guaranteed. Everyone with 5 wins or more are guaranteed, so that's 26 different decks already guaranteed, and we have a lot of 4-2s playing. So I'm going to basically talk about where the meta is at, kind of talk about some new decks that are cropping up, going to talk about some old decks, and we're going to start off with all the players who are 6-0. These players will have a bye going into next round. I will be streaming next round tomorrow at 9, or Sunday at 9 PST, 12 EST. But yeah, this was a 256 person tournament, the biggest tournament of the week. Let's get next week to be even bigger. Let's get the prize pool to be even bigger. Shout out to Mintom for donating, right? I always put 50 of my own dollars here, and then you in the community have been matching me, which has been super sick. So we've been able to play all the way up to top 8, and hopefully, next week is bigger, right? That's the goal. Next week, let's get next week bigger. But let's talk about some decks, starting off again with the undefeateds. The first deck is Suicune Greninja, right? The thing I kind of want to talk about is, yes, this is the best deck in the format, but I think that we have come to kind of what the optimal list is, or at least what the optimal list is for most decks that isn't Dark Tina, right? And it's going to be 1 Gira, right? There used to be debates on 2 Gira, like Ori, yada yada, but this is going to be 1 Gira, double Irida, Giant Cape Repel over double Cyrus, and a retreat card. Whether that card is Leaf, Boat, or X-Speed is up to you. A lot of tournament players opt for Leaf. A lot of high-ranking players do Boat. So really, it's up to you. A lot of people are dropping down to 1 hand rip, but you can run both hand rips, right? You can, in fact, run both hand rips if you want to run both hand rips. That's going to be kind of your decision to make at the end of the day. Coming up after is Guzzlord 18 Trainers. These decks have been just doing good based off of their matchups, right? I think Suicune they have losing matchups, but Suicune can play around every matchup. That's why you want to use Suicune. This deck has favorable matchups into a lot of what is popular, right? If we look at our metagame breakdown for this, it's the 3rd most used deck with a really high record, but they just do really good into the main decks. They do good into Gira Darkrai, they do good into Suicune Gren, and they do good into a lot of the Lightning Slop, right? A lot of their bad matchups kind of come from, if they even have many bad matchups, right, is like the Decidueye and then some of the Coco stuff. But that's a great place to be. This is a deck that's super, super consistent, super strong, and is currently beating everything, right? At least in this tournament, it's beating everything. So this was probably the deck that you wanted to bring. There isn't really much to talk about with the list. They are running double hand rip. Triple healing has been the standard, whether that's double PCL versus double potion is up to you. But I remember when I first talked about this deck, right, how strong it was. I didn't expect it to be the top 3 deck in this format, and obviously Will just helps it. And finally, the other 6-0 is Flareon EV Box. This deck, as it turns out, actually has a really good matchup into Dark Tina. And the reason why is the power of Red and EV Bag just allows you to kind of pop off. Flareon also being really good into Oricorio, and then of course Sylveon doing Sylveon things. The deck tends to lose to Guzzlord. I'm gonna have an interesting matchup versus Suicune. It's very playable, but it is still an even to slight edge. So that's kind of where I'm at. I do like the Sylveon list. I wish you could fit Mars in this type of list, but with 20 cards, you have to make sacrifices somewhere, and they chose to do double Repel, and that is the card that they have chosen to sacrifice, right? In Pokemon Pocket, it's a 20-card game. You need to work on the consistency of your deck as much as you can. Portland Poliwags is a player who also made it using a pretty interesting lightning deck, right? I think this is the best lightning deck in the format. It is Coco, Raikou, Pika, with Zera as the engine that makes elemental switches work. Obviously, Coco is also the engine. And what you're going to do is you're going to deal damage around and get this Pikachu set up. They kind of opted for a double E-Cord, which I think is kind of an interesting option, and using Red plus Guzma. Guzma and Pika should still pick up pretty much every KO in this game. Red is just like that little bit of extra oomph. Who doesn't like a little bit of extra oomph? Moving on, another Lightning deck who has in fact qualified. They are 5-1. Is Nuno, and Nuno is using another like Coco Zera Pichu Pika. So this is the same concept as that last deck, but they dropped the Raichus in favor of all Mons who are 1 or 0 retreat cost cards and get a little bit more supporters, right? We see the double Giant Cape, no more of that, you know, the energy switching, and just like instead of Guzma, it's Giovanni Red, double hand rip. Really cool deck. It's cool to see. Like I said, Tapu Koko is the single best Pokemon when it comes to playing against what's the card? When it comes against playing against Suicune. So no surprise to see this deck doing as good as it has been. And I think that if you saw that deck that they're playing right now, they're playing against a Decidueye deck. So Decidueye has been popping off as of this week. So if you guys are like, oh man, like this meta is stagnant, there is a Decidueye deck popping up, right? Decidueye is kicking butt. It is taking names. And the real reason is that it's good against everything that beats Suicune. Guzzlord, Dark Tina, you know, all of the Lightning decks hate playing against this Decidueye, and you have so much healing. 60 heal, 50 heal, Leaf Cape, add another 30 on it. So it's really cool. You can control where your damage is coming from with the skill dives, and it's, like, again, really cool. Not surprising to see this deck doing as good as it is, considering its matchup spread. The next deck I kind of want to talk about is this. The deck I ended up using Buzzwole for this tournament. It did not go well for me, but it did go well for Zach Wars. They are currently guaranteed cut. The reason why is kind of similar to that grass deck that we just talked about, Arca's deck, right? Is that you want a deck that does have a good matchup into all the decks that lose to Suicune or beat Suicune, right? This deck beats Oris, this deck beats Darkrai Tinas, this deck beats Guzzlords. This player opting for Kartana Pheromosa as opposed to 1-1. And then having, again, the double Erika's. Healing 50 is so much healing. And then double Hand Rip is where they would end up differentiating from me. Really excellent choices on their part, and they will be playing to make to win the tournament, right? So obviously this is a deck that has low usage now, and that's because of its matchup into Suicune isn't the best, similar to the Decidueye deck. But as the meta becomes more diverse, there becomes these not bottom feeders, but like the next tier. There's like decks, there's like the best decks, the decks that beat the best decks, and then the decks that beat the decks that beat the best decks, right? And that's where these decks are finding success and finding like their strong viability. And it's cool to see Buzzwole still kicking, still in contention. Of course, it's not an update video if we're not showing you guys an Umbreon vid deck. This guy is currently 5-1, guaranteed for cut. They are playing for a bye, which is why they continue playing. But they are using Umbreon, Darkrai, right? This deck only using one Darkrai, so you lower the chances of ever starting that Darkrai. That's a 1 in 5 chance. Otherwise, you're going to be starting off one of these EVs, the Leaf to retreat, and another Pcom. Two different decks now running Pcom, right? Sometimes you don't want to run Sylveon because you want every evolution to count, and this is how you make every evolution count, is with this Pcom. Again, EV bags, really good. Giant Cape is just to get these guys over to 160. And the real selling point is actually the baby Umbreon. For 1 energy, it locks down defending basics, right? So that's Guzzlord, that's Dark Tina decks, that's Suicune. Again, really cool. And as you keep dealing such low damage, eventually you bring in Umbreon. This being a 1 energy attacker also means that you can start attaching to Darkrai very quickly, or even attach to Umbreon just as quickly. So it's really cool to see Umbreon find its place in the meta. This deck is always at the top, right? It's only usually like 1 or 2 people playing, but one of those 2 people always make cut. So yeah, if you are looking for a clear sign to use Umbreon, like, please use this, right? A Dark Tina player got mad. Let's see their matches. They've played against literally Guzz, Arceus, Suicune decks, very positive into all of those, losing to a matchup that makes sense to lose, right? The Flareon Eevee guy. But yeah, as we keep going, speaking of that guy's opponent is this deck. This deck was an honorable mention because Hyperion just miscut. But this is the original creator of the Dark Daycare, right? And now they have gone even further beyond using Snorlax. Why would you want to use Snorlax in a deck like this? It's kind of simple. Snorlax has 160 HP and is very good into Suicune, right? That HP number is insane. It doesn't require filling the bench like an Arceus would. So you just end up with such a positive matchup against one of the best decks in the game. The basic layout is set like this so that you are basically guaranteed a baby in your starting hand. That is how, I think the odds were like 80 or 90%. It's like a really ridiculous number. You guys can do the math for me. Like, this is counting the 7 and 13 plus each individual draw. So it's really, really cool to see that this deck is basically going to start a baby. The only real problem with this deck is when you start multiple babies, right, and not see a Darkrai. They've changed it by adding Pokeballs back to the deck, right? They said, screw Leafs. I'm going to add back Pokeballs. I'm going to use Red and Giovanni. And it's really cool. The Tyrogue actually working as an Oricorio killer. You'll know that Tyrogue, Giovanni, Darkrai is enough to KO a Oricorio. So really, really cool to see Tyrogue find its way back into a Darkrai deck. And finally, some on-the-cusp decks is this guy who is fighting for their life. They are currently 3-2 fighting a Decidueye deck, 4-2. So it's really, really cool. This is Jumpluff Oricorio. This is a deck that is well, it's like high-key day one YouTube content, but I somehow beat a Mono Flareon deck. Yo, Taran, congrats. We got another Buzzwole in cut. But this is basically that kind of similar situation, right? It's just Jumpluff Ori. You have Lily for added healing, PCL for heal the Ori, and Leaf Cape. So they actually are all inning on Jumpluff's value, which I think is really cool for a deck that doesn't really get as much value out of it. The Raikou is just to draw cards, especially when you have Jumpluff Legendary Pulsing, but most of your games are going to be Jumpluff Ori, and you're going to be passing through Jumpluffs and Oris. If they make cut, that'd be really, really cool, but only time will tell, right? They are playing against the Decidueye deck. But I think, like I said, I wanted to highlight some decks that are just outside of cut, because sometimes you can strike gold, right? And this is a fun deck, especially this late into the format. This is a cool art for Hoppip. I didn't realize Hoppip had an art like this. And finally, another deck that's been popping off this week. This is a deck that's in contention to cut. It is Skarmory. This actually ended my run. I could not deal with my Buzzwole deck. Could not deal with Skarmory. A lot of players are playing this list. I think it popped off very recently. Like if I go to decks, go to Pokemon TCG Pocket, and we go over to Skarmory. They had a very recent tournament pop off. Yeah, they got second in this tournament, but in the last Froggy X, they got top 16. So that's where this deck's kind of usage is coming from. They have the double Jasmine, the double Rocky, just to lock things in. With Cyrus, you might ask, where's the Oricorio counter? Dude, who knows, man. Repel, Sabrina, Rocky Helmet, Prey, Jasmine enough. But lots of hand rips as well. That's what happens when you get to run an 18 trainer deck. This deck, when it's going second, feels broken, especially when you're not playing it versus Oricorio decks. But that's the nature of these decks, right? You play an Oricorio deck, you kind of cry. You don't play an Oricorio deck, you are living, right? And this guy is playing Dark Tina. So let's see how that goes for them. We'll find out. There's a few other players like this, but poor Jumpluff guy got stomped. Oh, unfortunately, the Jumpluff guy is out. But like I said, I wanted to highlight a deck that was on the cusp. And I guess I'll talk about a little bit about Caesar's deck now that you did officially make cut Big N, using again another Decidueye, this time playing with Spiritombs. They did mention Spiritomb felt a bit weak, but the concept of this deck is still there, right? You are going to play Erika's, and again, good to see the Giant Cape here as opposed to Double Leaf Cape is for Spiritomb. So they chose to remove a little bit of healing for more spread damage, but a lot of decks get that spread damage already with skill dives, right? So that's where. But this deck also allows you a good 1-1-2. So that's the difference of what you would want to use. But there we have it. Like I said, I'll be streaming Top Cut. We're going to have an even bigger tournament next week. So please, if you guys are interested in joining, The next Coliseum link will be in the description below, obviously after this Coliseum has been finished. And I'll obviously make a post over in my communities. I already currently have a community post asking about your thoughts on the Beast series, so please respond to that. And just looking forward to seeing who becomes the second official Judiment winner. But goodbye, YouTube. I am tired.